Hey there. So you've given us a really interesting pile of articles and book excerpts all about marketing in the digital age. It seems like you're really trying to understand how social media and this whole idea of the always connected consumer have like totally changed the game.
Yeah, for sure. It's
Yeah.
not just about a shift in strategy anymore. It's a complete, overhaul of how brands connect with people now.
It's so true. This isn't just swapping out billboards for banner ads. It's a
Mhm.
totally different way of thinking. One of these articles I was reading, it was saying how old school marketing campaigns, they were like seasonal trends here 1 minute, gone the next.
Now imagine a marketing landscape that never sleeps, kind of like the 24/7 news cycle. But instead of headlines, it's all about content, engagement, and building relationships. It's a 365-day campaign requiring you to be adaptable, responsive, and a master storyteller across all these different platforms.
You've got to be on your toes, right? Constantly adapting and responding to what your audience is telling you in real time. It's like having a conversation with thousands or even millions of people all at once.
It really is.
And speaking of conversations, one of these books you gave us talks about this idea of jab, 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 right hook. Now, that sounds more like something you'd hear in a boxing ring than a marketing meeting.
It's a powerful analogy, though. Think of the jabs as those valuable, engaging pieces of content that really resonate with your audience on the platforms they're actually using. You're building a connection, proving your worth before you ever go for the right hook, the actual
Exactly.
ask for a sale.
So you're saying it's not about constantly pushing your product. You've got to earn the right to sell by giving them awesome content first.
Exactly. And a perfect example of this is in the materials you provided, Cone Palace. They may not be a household name, but their approach to Facebook marketing is seriously impressive.
What do they do?
They're so focused on creating high-quality, shareable content. They're always asking themselves, would I share this? And it's paid off big time. They've built this loyal following that keeps coming back for more.
That's the dream, to have content so good that your audience becomes your biggest fan. But of course, it's just as important to know what not to do. Like, remember that Hollister campaign? The one where they were, well, I guess you could say guarding something. I think they were going for a meme, but it totally backfired.
Yeah, definitely not their finest moment. It highlights a really important point, though. Authenticity is everything in the digital age.
Hmm.
People can spot a forced marketing tactic from a mile away.
It's like they can smell the inauthenticity. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about the psychology behind all of this. One of the books you gave us really digs deep into the psychology of persuasion. And I have to say, this is where it gets really interesting for me.
Oh, absolutely. Cialdini's 6 principles of influence are so relevant to marketing. For instance, there's reciprocity, that age-old idea of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And then there's liking building, that genuine rapport can make all the difference.
It's not just about being a faceless brand anymore, right? People buy from people they actually like. Makes sense to me.
It makes a huge difference. And then there's social proof. I mean, think about it. We all look to others for cues, especially in this world of online reviews and influencers. Haven't you ever checked out a restaurant's reviews online before
Mm,
deciding to go there?
all the time. I mean, who hasn't, right? What else does Cialdini talk about?
Let's see. He also dives into the power of authority. We're more likely to trust experts and thought leaders. Then there's commitment and consistency. Once we've made a choice, we're more likely to stick with it. And lastly, there's scarcity, that fear of missing out. And let me tell you, that's a powerful motivator.
It's amazing to me how he doesn't just list these principles, he brings them to life with these incredible stories and examples. Like, I was hooked. And it got me thinking, if these principles are so effective in, say, getting someone to buy a car, can't they be used to get people to care about, well, almost anything?
That's a great question. It really gets to the heart of why understanding these principles is so important. Take the tragic case of Kitty Genovese.
That was such a sad story. For those who don't know, Kitty Genovese was attacked and killed. And even though multiple people heard what was happening, no one intervened.
Right. And it's a chilling example of the bystander effect, which is directly related to social proof. The more people that witness an emergency, the less likely any single person is to step in because they just assume someone else will. It really makes you think twice about the power of social influence, right?
It really does. And this whole idea of social proof, it's something marketers use all the time, isn't it? Like those ads that say, this is the hashtag one selling, fill in the blank. It's like they're tapping into our desire to be part of the majority. It's fascinating, but also a bit manipulative when you think about it.
It definitely makes you think. But that's the point, isn't it? To be aware of these tactics so we're not blindly influenced by them. Speaking of manipulation, another one of Cialdini's examples that really stuck with me was the story of the guy who buys a new car, and then the salesperson comes back and tells him there was a mistake, and the price is actually higher.
Ugh, that's the worst. It's like they're playing with your emotions.
It's a classic tactic called the low ball technique. They're playing on our need for commitment and consistency. The customer has already mentally committed to buying the car, so even when the price goes up, they're more likely to go through with the deal. It makes you realize how important it is to be aware of these tactics so you can make informed decisions, both as a consumer and as a marketer.
It's like you need to be one step ahead of the game. So we've talked about the decline of traditional marketing and this fascinating deep dive into the psychology of persuasion, but how do we actually put all of this into practice? Thankfully, you brought along some great resources that tackle just that.
One of the books you shared had a fantastic section on making ideas stick, using the acronym Successi Wimoti.
I'm a sucker for a good framework, and this one is super easy to remember.
Me too. So the first S stands for simple, right? You have to get to the core of your message, make it crystal clear.
Exactly. A great example from the book is Southwest Airlines Commander's Intent. Their core message is simple. We are the low-fare airline. Clear, concise, and it guides every decision they make.
I love that. No room for misinterpretation there.
Yeah.
Okay, so if S is for simple, what does the U stand for? U is for unexpected. To truly capture someone's attention, you need to disrupt their expectations, make them go, wait, what?
It's like the hook in a great mystery novel. It's not just about the answer, it's about the journey of getting there. You're pulled in from the very beginning.
That's a great way to put it. The book actually uses the question, what are Saturn's rings made of? As an example. It's a simple question, but it piques your curiosity, makes you want to know more.
Okay, that's two down. What's next?
The first C is for concrete. This means making your message tangible and relatable, something people can easily grasp. Instead of using abstract concepts, you need to use concrete language, sensory details, and vivid examples.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. The book talks about how the Nature Conservancy shifted their messaging from saving 2 million acres of land to preserving 50 landscapes. Which one resonates with you more?
Preserving 50 landscapes definitely paints a more vivid picture in my mind. I can almost feel it.
Exactly. It's more tangible, more evocative, and it just connects with people on a deeper, more emotional level.
It also feels more achievable, like something I could actually be a part of. So it sounds like making your message concrete is all about making it feel real and relatable to your audience. What about the second C?
The second C is for credible. In the world of marketing, you absolutely have to establish trust and make people believe in what you're saying.
And how do you do that? Especially in a world where everyone is bombarded with marketing messages from every direction.
Well, there are two key aspects to credibility, external and internal. External credibility comes from experts, authority figures, and testimonials. Like, think about those toothpaste commercials with the dentists. They are leveraging the authority of a dentist to lend credibility to their product. Internal credibility, on the other hand, comes from the details, the data, the examples that back up your claims.
So it's not just about saying, trust us, it's about backing it up with evidence.
Precisely. The book uses the story of Dr. Barry Marshall, who discovered that ulcers were caused by bacteria, to illustrate this point.
Wait, wasn't that a huge deal? I remember learning about that in school.
It was groundbreaking. But guess what? Nobody believed him at first. Even though his research was solid, he had to fight to be heard.
That's wild. It's like even when you're right, it can be an uphill battle to convince people. So how did he finally get people to listen?
He decided to put his money where his mouth was, literally. He infected himself with the bacteria to prove his point.
Now that's commitment. Talk about going above and beyond to prove a point.
It's a powerful example of how, even with scientific evidence, building credibility can be a matter of perception. Dr. Marshall's self-experiment was a bold move that ultimately changed the course of medical history.
Wow.
It's a good lesson for all of us. Sometimes you have to be willing to take risks to be believable. And that brings us back to the 6ES framework. We've covered simple, unexpected, concrete, and credible. What about the E?
E is for emotional, right? This is where you really connect with people on a deeper level.
Exactly. This means tapping into those raw, powerful emotions. Joy, fear, love, anger. The book talks about how even a completely made-up story about a flesh-eating banana spread like wildfire simply because it tapped into people's fear and disgust.
Wow, even if it wasn't real, that really shows you the power of emotion.
Think about it. We don't always make rational decisions, especially when we're afraid or emotional.
So true. Okay, so we've covered almost all of the 60S framework. Simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional. That leaves us with just one more S for stories. And you know I love a good story.
Our brains are wired for narratives. Stories make information memorable, relatable, and persuasive. Remember that iconic Jared from Subway campaign?
Oh, absolutely. The one where he lost all that weight eating Subway sandwiches.
That's the one. It wasn't just about 7 subs under 6 grams of fat.
Yeah.
It was Jared's personal weight loss journey that truly resonated with millions. It was a story that ran for over a decade.
It's crazy how a good story can do that.
It's true.
Speaking of stories, one of the books you gave us had this really interesting example, this story about a guy named John who goes jogging. The story itself is pretty boring, but then it asks you if John was wearing a sweatshirt or not. Do you remember that one?
Of course. And the fascinating thing was that people who were told John left his sweatshirt behind actually took longer to process the question.
Is that because they were trying to picture him without a sweatshirt in their minds?
Exactly. It suggests that our brains create these mini simulations of the stories we hear, almost as if we're experiencing them ourselves. We're not just passively listening, we're actively engaged in creating these mental images.
Wow. Our brains are basically running a virtual reality program in the background without us even knowing it. That's wild. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the decline of traditional marketing to the psychology of persuasion, and now the power of storytelling. But how does this all tie together? What's the key takeaway for someone like me, or anyone really, who wants to be more effective at getting their message out there?
The old playbook of marketing is gone. It's no longer about interrupting people with ads. It's about creating content that's so compelling, so valuable, and so inherently shareable that people can't help but pay attention.
So it's not just about being a storyteller, it's about being a master of context, too.
Exactly. You have to understand the subtle nuances of each platform you're using, whether it's the short, sweet nature of a tweet or the visual feast of something like Pinterest. It's like tailoring your outfit and how you talk, depending on whether you're having tea with your grandma or going to a rock concert.
You wouldn't wear a tuxedo to a rave, right?
Definitely not.
But speaking of style, one thing that really struck me from these readings is the importance of finding your own unique voice, that thing that makes your brand stand out. In a world that's totally saturated with noise, being authentic is more important than ever, wouldn't you say?
Authenticity is key. And that brings us to a really important question for you to think about. What stories does your brand tell? Are they simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and told through captivating narratives?
Those are some powerful criteria.
They are. And if your brand stories aren't hitting all of those marks, how can you refine them to cut through the noise and connect with your audience on a deeper level?
That's what it's all about, right? Making a connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's not about just selling a product or service. It's about building relationships, creating trust, and fostering a community around your brand.
It's about making people feel something real.
It's about making a difference.
Yeah.
And on that note,
Yeah.
I think we've given you a lot to think about.
We really have.
As we kind of wrap up this deep dive into marketing in the digital age,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from all of this?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think for me, it would be that sense of empowerment. You know, the marketing landscape may have changed, like we've been talking about, but the power of connection, the power of authenticity, and the power of great storytelling, it's as important as ever.
It really is. You've given us so much to think about today. From the death of traditional marketing to the psychology of persuasion, the power of storytelling, it's clear that to succeed in today's world, you got to be adaptable, creative,
Yep.
and always willing to learn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Always be learning.
Keep those brain cells firing.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this deep dive. We hope you found this insightful, and we hope you feel ready to tackle the ever-evolving world of marketing. Until next time.
See you then.